The snow on the Marias made a sound like paper under boots. It was January 1870, the rim of Montana white and hard, the sky low enough to rub a shoulder against a hat. The cavalry column moved out of Fort Ellis before dawn, hooves muffled, canteens wrapped, breath turning to ghosts in front of faces. Orders sent them north toward Piegan camps, mountain chief, heavy runner, lodges where smoke and illness gathered. In the officer's coat was a name: Baker. Major Eugene Baker, young for the weight his coat carried, weary for the distance he still meant to go. His scouts traced trails to a bend where willows showed rabbit tracks and the river held pewter ice. Before sunup, the column reached the ridge above the lodges. The soldiers smelled wood smoke and tallow and the faint sweet rot of hides thawing near fires. Women fed small flames with kindling kept dry inside shirts. The sick coughed and turned their faces to the lodge poles. A scout said the words meant to stop a slaughter. "That is Heavy Runner's camp. He is friendly. He carries a pass." The words turned to frost. Below, a man came up from among the lodges, bareheaded, flinging his robe wide to show emptiness. He held a folded pass and shouted in English and Blackfoot. Cold light lay over the river. A blue sleeve lifted, and the skirmish line took shape. They fired, first at the man with the paper, then at the lodges when the shapes began to run. Smoke hung low. Horses stamped. The first volley tore holes in canvas and bodies. A girl ran into the snow and fell as if to hide. A woman with a baby on her hip turned to draw a boy behind her and spun, then did not move again. Men fired back from the edges of camp where they could, but the hill was already printing black coats into the white. Baker's men swept through the camp. They kicked down poles and tore through bedding. They dragged sick people from shelters because someone inside had fired. They shot shadows because a shadow moved. By then the lodges were churned hides, spilled kettles, and people unsure whether to run to river or sage. An old man who had survived a winter starvation pulled a child into the lee of a fallen lodge and listened for the lull in firing that means you can breathe again. It did not come soon. Heavy Runner lay in the snow with the paper still in his hand. People say his mouth was open as if to keep singing the sentence he had started. The pass itself, a clumsy document with promises printed like fence rails, blew a few feet and stuck against a boot. Later, when the wind dropped, someone placed the paper on his chest as if a promise could warm a man. The Marias froze hard, except where it kept places soft for the dead. Soldiers counted bodies like hay bales, quickly, not wanting to know what they stacked. Later reports settled on a number a soldier could say on a parade ground without his voice breaking: 173. Rumor rolled the number higher. Every list agreed. Too many were women, old people, children, and those who wore the puckered scars of smallpox. When the firing slowed, soldiers burned the lodges. Flames chewed canvas into flags of smoke. Snow hissed where fat fell. A boy of maybe 10 reached for a tin cup near his mother's hand and spilled it. He watched the water turn to a skin of ice before it finished running. A lieutenant sent for stretchers. The day thinned. Baker turned his column back when the ammunition and the daylight said so. On the ridge, the line of horsemen looked back. In the river bottom, the winter did what it always does, kept what it was given, and kept quiet. News crossed the territory with the speed grief borrows from anger. Telegraph keys clicked a cold music. In Washington, a few voices, smaller but sharper, asked what to call a nation that makes a victory from a village. An agent wrote that Chief Heavy Runner had shown his pass and been shot down. Another pushed the paper aside with a hand that had learned not to sign when a pen trembled. A hearing was suggested, then delayed, then forgotten on purpose. Word reached trading posts first in talk of hostiles and reprisal, then the qualifiers fell away. Children carried out, A man shot holding a paper, the river quiet, while the camp burned. At the agency, the clerk who issued passes stacked his forms and stopped meeting eyes. A captain said he did not relish the work, but would do it again if ordered. A scout drank hard and did not sleep well. The soldiers came home to their posts and wrote reports. Some kept their silence. Others spoke too loudly in town and were thanked by men who wanted the frontier simplified to a map and a hymn. Promotions took the sting out of questions. Paydays and fresh mounts encouraged forgetfulness. A paragraph in a newspaper praised energy, and another, smaller one, wondered where the dead were buried. Among the Piegan, the story needed no ink. It went to the ordinary place where stories are kept: a mother's knees, a fire ring, a winter count hide. Marks cut into buffalo skin held a year in symbols. A man with a flag shot, a lodge marked with black. Women who had carried water all their lives learned to carry rage without spilling. Children watched and understood that the river could open in the ice and take what it wanted. Some dead were burned because the ground would not open. Others were left where crows and foxes would do what the snow did not finish. A few were laid on scaffold poles and dressed in best blankets, and songs were sung until voices failed. The songs did not demand verdicts. They spoke names, asking the wind to keep them and the hills to repeat them back. Spring came late. Survivors moved camp with care, carrying kettles, poles, and the few keepsakes winter allows. Mountain Chief's people counted what remained and what could be rebuilt. They laid snares, mended lines, and brought small fires back to life, as if that could tutor the world in patience. Soldiers hammered new fort walls. A judge wrote a paragraph that sounded like rebuke and read like permission. The country absorbed the event the way cold soil absorbs blood, slowly, and then not at all. In histories, the name shifts: Marias Massacre, Piegan Massacre, Baker Massacre for those who chose to say the officer's name out loud, or sometimes a date without a title, as if a line could bear less weight if left plain. There are entries that say 173 killed, most women and children. Entries that add by mistake, as if a camp could be accidentally surrounded at dawn by men who had ridden half a state in bitter weather and kept their powder dry. Stand on the ridge above the Marias in your mind. The wind will show you how the morning moved, hard and flat. See the circle of lodges, smoke lifted into gray handwriting. See a man step forward with a paper, robe flung wide to show emptiness. See blue coats stepping down the slope in a line that pretends to be order. Hear rifles, horses, and one voice you will not forget. A woman calling a child's name as if it could call the child back. The frontier is full of men who rode out to make examples, and of examples that turned out to be crimes. Count the dead, and you get a number for a report. Speak their names, and you learn a lesson the page cannot hold. It says only this: passes and promises made at a desk shatter in the mouth of a rifle. Winter will keep what you give it, and silence can echo across a plain longer than any shout. Thank you for listening to Deserted Trails. Subscribe for more forgotten stories from the old frontier.